The daughter-in-law took care of her mother-in-law for 8 long years, while the woman's own daughters barely asked about her. When the elderly woman passed away, the daughters inherited all the properties and land, and the daughter-in-law received nothing. But on the 49th day after the death, while cleaning her mother-in-law's bed, she discovered something hidden beneath the mattress, and everything truly began with one trembling sentence. "My dear, I was wrong. My name is Elena. I married into a large family when I was 25 years old. My husband was the youngest of the children, and the family house was big and imposing, filled with memories, yet strangely lacking warmth. From the very first days of my marriage, my mother-in-law's health began to deteriorate rapidly. She suffered from a severe chronic illness related to old age, one that required constant care, day and night, without interruption. For 8 long years, I was the only one by her side. I gave up my job, abandoned my ambitions, and became her constant shadow. I prepared her food and fed her spoon by spoon when her hands could no longer hold steady. I changed her bandages to prevent bed sores, stayed awake through long nights, massaging her tired legs, and washed her soiled clothes in silence, without complaint, without resentment, and without expecting thanks. 8 full years. I did all of this out of duty and respect, yet deep inside, I held on to a small, quiet hope I never dared to voice, that my mother-in-law would acknowledge my sacrifice. I believed that, at the very least, she might leave something for my husband and me, a small piece of land behind the house, or some savings so we could open a modest shop and live with dignity. On a cold morning, as golden light slipped through the window, my mother-in-law passed away peacefully on her old wooden bed. At the funeral, my husband's 2 sisters arrived. They had visited their mother no more than once a year, yet that day they appeared overwhelmed with grief. One of them cried bitterly while clutching their mother's photograph, as if she were the most devoted daughter. The other entertained the neighbors with old stories, exaggerating every detail and draping them in emotion. I sat in the corner of the room, wrapped in my black shawl, feeling like an invisible servant in the very house where I had spent years caring for their mother. Then came the day the will was read. The lawyer and the members of the Reyes family gathered in the living room. The tension was so heavy that even the whisper of the wind in the courtyard could be heard. The lawyer, a stern-looking man, began to read in a cold, measured voice. The will of the deceased states that all her possessions, the house, bank accounts, and lands, are to be divided equally among her 3 children. My chest tightened. I waited. I waited to hear my name, any sign, any acknowledgement. But the lawyer closed the folder and said, "The daughter-in-law is not mentioned in any clause of the inheritance, except for her right to reside in the house by virtue of her marriage to the youngest son." I froze. It was no longer about money or land. That no longer mattered to me. What truly suffocated me was the feeling of betrayal. 8 years of my life, during which I was the only one by her side, caring for her with all my heart, while her daughters barely visited. Why? Why was everything given to those who had abandoned her? My husband stood beside me in silence. He gently held my hand without reproach, his eyes filled with sympathy. "It doesn't matter, my love," he said softly. "We did it from the heart. We did the right thing. Don't worry about this money." His words were comforting, yet the pain of being disregarded ran deep. Weeks passed, and a clear coldness settled between me and my sisters-in-law. Once they had control over their share of the inheritance, they began criticizing the way I managed the household. I accepted everything in silence, as I always had. When the 49th day after her death arrived, I decided to clean my mother-in-law's room thoroughly, as I was used to doing. I lifted the old mat she used to keep beside the bed, and that was when I noticed a small bulge near the head of the bed. Driven by curiosity, I reached in with my hand. I pulled out an old, yellowed envelope, carefully sealed with red wax. My name was written on it, in my mother-in-law's trembling handwriting, to my son's wife. My body shook. I opened the envelope, and the moment I began to read, tears poured down my face. The letter read, "To Elena, if you are reading these words, it means I am gone, and my heart can no longer say what my tongue failed to express while I was alive. Forgive me, I was wrong. For 8 years, you were by my side. I watched you give up your job, your youth, and your comfort for my sake. You fed me when my hands trembled, washed me when I was ashamed of myself, and stayed awake when pain gnawed at my bowel bones. I love my daughters, yes, but the truth I hid from everyone is this. I did not want to mention you in the official will. I did not do this out of ingratitude, but out of fear. Fear that your love for me would turn into conflict, and that you would be seen as greedy in their eyes. I know my daughters, and I know the harshness of their hearts when money is involved. Lift the third wooden board beneath the bed." I pressed the letter to my chest and lifted the mattress. One board, then another, and beneath the third I found a small wooden box, locked with a rusty clasp. I opened it. Inside was the shock of my life. The deed to the piece of land behind the house, registered in my name. A bank passbook containing enough money to open not just a small shop, but a large one. And a final note that read, "This is your right. I did not give you charity. I returned to you a part of your life. Tell no one except my son. And if anyone confronts you, say, 'My mother knew who her true daughter was.'" I collapsed in tears, not only from joy, but because she had truly seen me, because she had known, because my sacrifice had not been in vain. For the first time, I was no longer the invisible servant. I was the daughter she chose with her heart, not by blood.